We've been trained to think that we're just supposed to say yes. We're just supposed to get it done at all costs, at any cost. Good leadership isn't nodding your head and saying yes and doing all the things. Nobody is above you and nobody is below you. Not in terms of you being an equal human to everybody else, period, point blank. We get to share the truth. We get to be authentic. We get to set the team up for success, even if other people don't want to hear the news. Hello and welcome to the Unlock Lab. I am coming at you from Vermont, and I'm feeling very Vermont. Between my plaid shirt here and my growing roots, I'm definitely feeling a little bit more country than normal, but hey, like we have all sides of us, right? So look, I'm so glad you're here because one of the most important skill sets that you can have as a leader of yourself, as a leader of others, and as somebody who reports to somebody else or has stakeholders in other places and spaces, one of the things that you need to master is your ability to manage up. And that involves a great amount of communication, of expectation setting, and of constantly resetting expectations based on things that may have happened, timelines getting backed up, all the things. But let me slow it down a little bit before I get into these tactical bits of what it really means to manage expectations and how you actually do it. Because before you get to the how of managing expectations, whether that's above you, below you, across from you, whatever, is that you have to do the deeper work of understanding that you need to put yourself at the same level as everyone else. Nobody is above you and nobody is below you. Not in terms of you being an equal human to everybody else, period, point blank. And that I think is something that is harder to actually do than to say, to really honor your worth and your value as a human, and that it is not attached to your title. It's not to say that the folks above you or below you or beside you don't deserve respect. They do deserve respect for their position. What it's to say is that you have a right to say what you need to say in order to do your job well. You have a responsibility to let people know the impact and the implications of their decisions or perhaps indecisions. You see, we've been trained to think that we're just supposed to say yes. We're just supposed to get it done at all costs, at any cost. There are managers, right, that make you think that if you don't get the thing done according to how they want it done, then something is wrong with you, that you're not delivering. And we have to decondition from this type of thinking. We have to recognize that as leaders, we are being of service by being honest about realities, about truth, and about the hard choices that need to be made. Because let's be honest, people don't want to make difficult decisions or difficult choices because they're being asked to do everything all the time, all at once. Like, I'm not really exaggerating. I know this because I have been in large multinational organizations with high expectations, high standards, and significant pressure to win in the marketplace. And the pressures of our capitalist society, of constant growth, of constant increase of profits, all the things mean that there's often unrealistic expectations that are placed on us. So what we have to do is we have to manage up, and we have to maybe say the things that people don't want to hear. And that's why the very first step of this work is for you to honor that you are not above and you are not below anyone else, that you are just as valuable. And if you actually want to do your job well, then you will be willing to communicate what is necessary. And let's talk about what that means. Communicate what is necessary. So one of the big pieces of like managing up has to do with timelines of things, right? And if you are in those roles, you are hopefully an expert and skilled at developing timelines and managing timelines. And every time that something happens that's going to disrupt that timeline in a big way, then it is your responsibility to communicate what is going on and how things might be changing in terms of those timing expectations. So whether those activities are a vendor provided something late, or senior leadership isn't making a decision, or the money isn't there to proceed, whatever those obstacles are, you then have to let the folks know that need to know why things are changing and what that means. And it also means that you can do the work to come up with solutions if, for example, they want to get that timing back on track. If there are things that can be done to get things on track, then go to the table not only with the changing expectations, but also, well, if we want to rectify this, here's what is needed. Now, what's needed might be more resources, whether that's human resources, financial resources, or whatever. Maybe there's some decisions that can be made that can speed some things up. Maybe there's some things that can happen in parallel, which means maybe the quality might suffer, but the timelines can be met, right? So I'm not saying bring the problems to your leadership or to the stakeholders. I'm saying bring the obstacles, bring the reality, and then bring potential solutions if folks want to get that corrected. And oftentimes by sharing, okay, if you want to course correct or if you want to make this a little bit better, here's what you can do, then they can feel more in control and they can feel like there's more power they have to get the result that they want. Even if they can't make that happen, at least they know what could be done. And that can offer some solace. That can put people more at ease. As funny as it may sound, even if they can't get the results, because at least they know that everything that could be done was done, or everything that could be done, at least we know what those things are. So just to bring it all together, yes, explain what's happening and why things are getting delayed. Also explain and provide options for how things can get rectified, get better, or get back on track. By doing that, you are giving those stakeholders or your leadership options for how they want to handle it. So maybe they want to be in acceptance. Okay, this is just what it is. Or maybe they want to go at bat and say, okay, we need to get more resources, or we want to hire another person to help, or we need to take something off that other team's plate so that this can be prioritized. But at least you're then in a position of clearly communicating what the options are and also being clear about when those decisions need to be made about if you want to pull the trigger on those options. And this is how you both empower yourself and empower your leader to say, here's the menu. Which way do you want to go? And sometimes I think it's funny that I'm saying this because it seems like an obvious thing, but actually it's really not an obvious thing. And I think that's because, well, you don't take a class in school about managing expectations, and you're often not mentored around how to manage expectations because we also live in this world where there is this power over mentality. Like if you're told to do something, then you need to just do it. But to be a great steward of yourself and of your team and of your projects and your goals, then you have to be a steward of clear communication and clear expectation setting. So getting back into kind of some of the tactical pieces, absolutely you need to document, especially when you're dealing with leadership that is very assertive or very aggressive. Even if they didn't have come to a decision or come to an agreement in a conversation, you can absolutely recap what was discussed, what decisions are outstanding, what the implications are in an email and send it. And this is not necessarily a CYA tactic, though kind of it is. It's more so in service to, again, make that communication very clear in another format. So over email versus like verbally, it can help to land the point. And you know what? Everybody learns differently and everybody makes decisions differently. Maybe it's hard to make a decision on the spot, but maybe it's easier when they see here are the options and here's the implications. It's easier to make a decision when you have like, a multiple choice sitting in front of you. So really document. And then that's also helpful for when you have follow-up conversations. And if somebody wants to say, I don't remember that, you can say, well, I can pull up the email because I did recap that. So like, let's go back to that and see if we can, make a decision to move things forward. So there's ways that you can handle things very amicably and very respectfully, even if you're being gaslit or even if you're having a really hard time getting someone to make a decision. There are ways that you can communicate that can help move things along. And this is a skill set, and you're not going to learn it all in this moment on this podcast, but like you can absolutely reach out to me if you're like, man, what do I do in this situation? Or like, talk to me more about how I deal with a difficult leader that's not making decisions. Happy to talk to you through that. But I think part of managing expectations also is you having real clarity along with those key stakeholders around what is priority and checking in as frequently as you need to about those priorities. This allows you to see if there's ever any disconnect with those expectations of priorities. Because what happens, as we know, is things are constantly changing and not everything is getting communicated back down to you or up to you about what's been changing. So by you checking in, and the frequency level is something that you're going to have to, understand what makes sense. Maybe it's weekly. Maybe you work in a kind of function or industry where it's daily. And maybe that even changes depending on what's going on. But you can check in and say, look, here are my priorities for this week, just confirming that this is what you're aligned to as well. And that's a beautiful way to stay on track and not have things fall through the cracks or have a big issue because you've been running and gunning towards something that actually changed in terms of priority order, 2 months ago. These things happen. So the more that you take control of the communication, of managing the expectations, of making sure you're clear about priorities and that you're being clear also with your team and those who report into you about what priorities are. Like take that responsibility and accountability for that because it will change the game in terms of your effectiveness and in terms of how others communicate with you. I'm a big fan of over communicating. And the time that you can stop with the over communicating is when there is real clarity about those communication channels and about what's most important to communicate and what needs to be communicated. But until you have that well-oiled machine, then I say over communicate, especially when you're starting a new job, especially when you're starting a new company, when you have new leadership, when you have new employees. Over communicate. That's how you can manage expectations effectively. So I hope that this helps you to see that as a leader, this is one of your main responsibilities is setting the expectations that will set you up for success, your team up for success, and your leadership up for success. And yes, that means you might have to have some difficult conversations. You might have to kind of push somebody against the wall a little bit and say, like, I need you to make a decision, or like, how can I support you in making a decision on this by X date? You get what I'm saying here, that you have to be willing to stand up for doing the job that you know that you can do and hold other people accountable for what needs to happen. And this is how we also set appropriate boundaries. I mean, that's really core to all of this, because you might be able to get all the things done in the timing that they want, but at what cost? Like, are you working around the clock? Are you burning yourself out? Are you, lacking time for actual creativity or process improvement, or, debriefing, or actually, putting people first on your team and in your organization? Like, by setting expectations, you're able to change the game of what good leadership actually looks like. Good leadership isn't nodding your head and saying yes and doing all the things. First of all, you're going to lose a lot of respect from your people if you're constantly saying yes and you're constantly forcing other people to overdo and overwork. We have to break the systems that are happening right now. And in order to break the systems, we have to change how we lead. And to change how we lead, we have to change how we manage expectations, or we have to put managing expectations on the table. And in order to do that, first and foremost, we must recognize that we are equal to the folks that we work with as humans. And we get to share the truth. We get to be authentic. We get to set the team up for success, even if other people don't want to hear the news. We have to be strong in our convictions and knowing our jobs well and knowing what's actually going to move the needle. And love that about who you are. Love that about how good you are, that you know what's going on. You have all the details, and you need to share those details, because the further away the folks are from the details, the harder it is for them to understand why decisions have to be made and why things are happening the way that they are. And you get to be the carrier and the messenger of that information, and carry it well and respectfully and in service to the team and to the goals. So I could go on and on about this, but I will let you off the hook. And I hope this helps you think more deeply about your process for managing expectations and what scares you about it, or what are those situations in which you have a hard time managing expectations? Because that's the other thing. Maybe you're good at it, and maybe you're willing to do it, 90% of the time. And maybe this conversation can spark for you, what is that 10%? Because even by unlocking that 10%, you unlock so much potential in your own leadership. You have no idea that it matters in all the situations. So tackle the difficult ones, and you'll see how your leadership expansion goes from there. And I'd love to hear the stories. So please reach out to me on any of the communication channels. All that information is in the show notes. I love to hear the stories of what's going on with you, and what your challenges are and what your wins are in terms of managing expectations. Well, thank you so much for coming to the Unlock Lab. And by the way, if this episode was helpful for you, I'd love if you shared it with somebody that you think could use this information. And I appreciate you spreading the word and helping more leaders be more effective. All right. Thanks for coming to the lab, and ciao for now.